In case you want to know some details about Mr. Lakshman Jayasekara, his key areas of expertise happen to be urban and regional planning, project management. And as for his educational qualifications, he has a BSc, University of Sri Jawaharlal, MSc, University of Moratual, postgraduate in Traffic and Transport Planners, University College of London. And as for his professional qualifications, may I state that being a president of the Institute of Town Planners Sri Lanka, 2002 to 2003, fellow of the Institute of Town Planners Sri Lanka 2001 to 2009, Sri Lanka's representative Commonwealth Association of Planners 1999 to 2002, and he is a senior certified valuer CSV USA from 1990 to 2002. He is also a member of the Executive Committee Organization of Professional Association from 2008 up to date, and chairman Board of Education and Accreditation Committee, Institute of Town Planners of Sri Lanka 2004, and a founder member of the Chamber of Construction Industry. And from April 2015 right up to date, Project Director, Team Leader, Western Region Megapolis Planning Project, Ministry of Megapolis and Western Development. And from September 2001 to October 2013, Director General, National Physical Planning Department, NPPD Sri Lanka. And from 2002 to 2003, Director General, Urban Development Authority, UDA Sri Lanka. 2004 to 2006, Consultant Eco-Plan, New Zealand Z Limited, Auckland, New Zealand. And June 2004 to April 2005, Consultant Arcadis Euro Consult Netherlands, based on the eastern region of Sri Lanka. And from April 2003 to April 2004, Chief Planning Consultant and CEO, Board of Investment, BOI Sri Lanka. And from 2005 to 2007, CEO, Apico RPC Construction. And from May 1999 to June 2001, Additional Director General, National and Regional Planning, Urban Development Authority, UDA, Sri Lanka. Then from February 1989 to February 1990, World Bank BKH Consultant, Netherlands. Andropogan Associates Incorporated, USA. And from February 1989 to February 1990, World Bank BKH Consultant, Netherlands, Andropogan Associates Incorporated. So we have much pleasure in inviting our guest speaker this evening at this very, very important seminar. And I call upon Mr. Lakshman Jayasekara.
Good evening. Dr. Rohan Karunaratne, President of the Institute of Builders, Engineer Sali Kaluarachi, Secretary Ceylon Institute of Builders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to address you this evening, and I'm very impressed and touched by the gesture of I'm sure Dr. Rohan Karunaratne and the compeer for recognizing the environmental disaster that we are undergoing today. I'm sure Dr. Rohan Karunaratne would have had another date fixed for this had it not been pre-arranged, and I'm sure some tickets were sold and all that pre-arrangement that has gone into this one. The taking into this account, today my presentation would have three components. First component would touch upon some of the things that the general public and the professional community should know about the beginning of planning process, where these environmental issues were seriously considered, and continuously we canvass the government to take some of these issues seriously and take action. And had those actions been adopted, probably the enormous number of deaths that we are hearing today would not have happened. So I would take a few minutes of your traffic and transport interest to deal with bit of information about the current situation in the country today so far as the environmental disaster is concerned. Forgive me for deviating from the main agenda, but I thought it is very necessary and you would be really interested. In the second part, we'll give a glimpse of the megapolis master plan, overall plan, which most probably you would have known. For some time we have been disseminating information on that through our lectures, through our workshops, and also paper advertisement, and of course our website is now fully operational. In the third part, I would go into the main subject, which is the traffic and transport issues and the solutions that the megapolis planning team would propose, and the action that we have taken. Towards the end, we will specify the number of projects running into about 30-40 projects related to the traffic and transport system, where we urge the Builders Association, Chamber of Construction, and most of the private sector initiative in this country to take the leadership, take part, take the ownership, and also adapt some of the construction activities, taking into account their ability to deliver more than be bystander. So, taking my presentation today would have, we are expecting Dr. Dimantha D. Silva, who is our transport consultant, to join us anytime. He is at the Engineers Institute. Today we have another workshop on the same subject. So we are running two organizations, two workshops together. But I am ably assisted by Mr. Kaushan Devasurendra and Vanuji Abhikrama. Of course, Vishwa, who is doing the Vishwa Pir is doing the planning side. I must tell you, our resource team on the traffic and transport system planning had, other than the Sri Lankan team of consultants, we had the Sabana team from Singapore, was suggested by the government of Singapore. They were with us on planning this traffic and transport system. In addition to that, I wanted to share these names with you today, because these are the people who represented different agencies, different institutes in this country. Therefore, this is not a plan of the megapolis, this is a plan of all the people, all the department, all the agencies, all the consultants who had some capacity, capability, and starting from our own organization, University of Moratuwa, then Ministry of Transport, Colombo Municipal Council, Police Department, which we took part continuously in all the deliberation, which took about 9 months continuous work, and the Western Province Transport Authority, National Transport Commission, UDA, Ministry of Transport, RDA, Road Development Authority, and Ceylon Railway, the Sri Lanka Railway Department, and the Western Province Transport Authority again, so on and so forth. So as you can see, what I am really doing today is doing justice to these ladies and gentlemen who spent time with us for 9 long months preparing this plan that I am going to present. So while I am very privileged to take the ownership of the plan, it is the contribution and the ambition of the people who are represented here, of course, ably assisted by the Singapore team. I am now diverting from, of course, that is about the traffic and transport plan, and now I am going to just touch upon a little bit of the environmental issues. And as you can see, what I am suggesting is a plan that was submitted to the government of Sri Lanka in 2011. During the 2011, our current president was a member of the Presidential Commission on the National Physical Plan, National Planning of Sri Lanka. The former president was the president, chairman of that committee, and both of them had the prerogative and the privilege of approving this plan. What is in this plan mainly is, I think I'm going to use this one, maybe Engineer Karna Singh has to give a little bit of space, otherwise I'm going to disturb you. Okay, in that we identified the area that is above 1000 meters, 1000 feet actually, as the most fragile area of Sri Lanka. And this area is in extent about 14,000 square kilometers. Out of our 65,000, 14,000 square kilometers. We designated as troublesome and very vulnerable and the prone to all kind of natural disasters. We told the government and insisted, this is nothing to do with the megapolis. At that time I was working at the National Physical Plan Department. We had a very strong team deliberating on this for about 1 year, and then we told the government this is going to be a disaster in making, and therefore that we should try and get some of these people out of the dangerous areas. Also commence the reconstruction of the forestry and the water catchment area. And incidentally, the area that was that came down yesterday night, Mavanal and Arnayaka was one of these areas, and there were many other areas. And I remember vividly when we made the presentation and concluded it, current president, Mr. Maithripala Sirisena, who was a minister then but who was a member, said, when can we start? A man coming from Polonnaruwa probably felt not only the disaster impending, but also the water generation, that the Sri Lanka gets water from this area, this 14,000 square kilometers, not only the heart of the country, but also the area that generate most of the rivers. We have 103 rivers starting from here, and these rivers, if they are to sustain, if they are to continue, if they are to be rich in water, this area has to be totally protected and taken care of. Did we do that? Well, yesterday was a vivid example of what really happened. Again, together with that, this table, I think it's a bit of a complicated table, but we identified 800 square kilometers in that upcountry map that I showed you. 800 square kilometers barren land. These lands are not cultivated, they don't have any forestry, they don't have any tea. Tea planters have been using that and given up, therefore it is becoming barren land. These are the barren land that is easy for mudslides to drop in. And we said, this is no man's land, this is owned by the government or the what is called RPC, regional plantation companies. Let's get this going. Yeah, let's get the forestation going. And that was the easiest thing to do, easiest thing to start. And the government didn't have to spend a lot of money because the forestation doesn't cost much money. And the RPCs were ready to do some, some amount of plantation. But unfortunately, some of the RPCs started removing even the forest that was there and using their power. So altogether, starting from that 800 square kilometers, there were conservation of protected area network, which was about 2 million hectares, which was ripe for this particular activity. Then the conservation area was something like 1.4 million hectares. Then the increasing high productivity commercial plantation, meaning we even gave the deal in such a way that the planters could have increased their planting activities in the most suitable area, rather than the mountain slope, rather than the most vulnerable areas, the areas that can be washed away. We increase the number of areas where the plains are available. The level is at a lower side, and they could have even increased the plantation. All what was wanted was the initiative and the push by the government, and unfortunately that doesn't exist up to this day. So with those two slides, I will now get into why megapolis plan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you really look back this particular history that I explained to you about all these landslide, floods, and the various other associated disasters, I must tell you, every country that have developed in this region, take for example Malaysia, take Singapore, and many other countries, including the Western culture, always had a plan, and they stick to the plan and they develop on the plan. No matter what government or what prime minister or what president rule their countries, they always stick to one single uniform futuristic plan. And this is a culture that was developed in the West, and that was later on developed in the eastern part of our world, particularly even the small land section that is available in Australia compared to their huge continent. They were sticking to their little space and sustaining their 30 million people in the most productive way. And they do have natural disasters, but these are our natural disasters. If you take 80% of our natural disasters are man-made natural disasters. They are really not natural disasters. Okay, that is what we are trying to avoid in the megapolis plan. That's why you should take megapolis plan seriously. Whether we do that plan or somebody else does that plan, whether this government can implement it or futuristic government or some other government can implement it, you got to get this going. It is not a plan of megapolis ministry. It is not a plan of this government, not a plan of the ministry, not a plan of few of us who are working there. It is a plan that the people should have for their own future. If it is not implemented by those who are responsible, it is you who should really ask for the implementation. This is what happened by the leaders. This is what made happen by the leaders in places like Singapore, Malaysia, now the emerging economy in Indonesia, which is doing a lot of planned development in a major way, and very soon Indonesia is going to be one of the biggest economic power hub in this part of the world. Look at India. Now the present Prime Minister has planned 100 new cities within the core of India, and he is sticking to that. And he brought in an act that was to develop the infrastructure, which was very controversial in the sense of the conventional historical culture of India. They didn't like farmland being taken for the infrastructure. They did have a lot of problems with the farmers, but he's pushing this, and with many other initiatives such as cleaning India and keeping it more pleasant and the environmentally friendly. That is why megapolis planning team and the current government has, for the first time in the history, a government pushing a plan. We did not start this plan. I must tell you that. We did not, I was working in the private sector, and many of my colleagues, members are from different fields. We came together for a single purpose, because the government wanted a plan done for the Western region. We did not initiate it. It is not the professional community who initiated this plan at this time. It is the government who called us and hired the team from Singapore and said, can you all get together and do this plan this time and do it fast? We want to bring in the implementation. Now, in addition to that, I must tell you, not only the plan was done, there is a new enactment coming in called Western Region Megapolis Authority Act. That act, the basic act was done by our team and was run through the eminent lawyers and the legal profession in this country. Thereafter, the Attorney General's Department, we were talking to the legal draftman. Somehow, this act, having gone through so many consultations, is now in front of the Cabinet. Cabinet would probably take a decision within next 2 weeks, and then it gets to the Parliament. One of the most powerful pieces of legislation I have seen in my life during on the legislative side, and that will give tremendous and immense power to those who are going to implement this project. And therefore, again, I must tell that that is the initiative of the government. And it's so much so, I have attended most of those meetings where the politicians take the leadership rather than just the legal people. They were very clear what they wanted. They wanted the very fast, very efficient, very modern development for this country. Now, I haven't seen this chemistry happening between the professionals and the politician before. I told you what happened to 2011. Two presidents saying, when can we start? But it never did get going. Until today, I don't know whether it can happen next year. So, there's a history and a culture in Sri Lanka of not having a planned development. Perhaps except the Mahavali. And few development in the GC. So here is an opportunity for the first time in the recent history that the government is taking a massive effort to do a planned development. It is in that context we should have this deliberation today. Our concept on the master plan is very simple. We are going to decentralize Colombo. Colombo cannot sustain as it is. City of Colombo is coming to the dead end if we go the way we go. We can develop Colombo city provided it is being backed by the rest of the region. This is what we did. We identify the core area, then densify the nodes on periphery and the core area, then link it with the mass transit system. Without the mass transit system, this new megapolis cannot work. I have been telling my colleagues, megapolis plan, 70% of megapolis plan is the transport. If the transport doesn't work, forget about it. So, what we are now doing is identifying those possible development nodes and taking the developed specialized economic clusters, we call it. What are these clusters? Colombo core area, then Katunayaka and Mirigama industrial town area, then coming down to Horana and coming down to Malambe and up to Malambe, from Malambe to Homagama IT and Science City, and logistic corridor between Paliagoda and Katunayaka, which is partly developed but a lot more to be done. And then of course the area in Kalutara, which is actually part of Singaraja forest. Although we call it western region, the Colombo region, it is part of forest. And we are very lucky in a way, very fortunate to have within the western region about 3% is pure forest with a very high biodiversity. And I am told about 50% of the biodiversity in the whole country, very fragile biodiversity exists in this area. Now, for the first time in the history, we identified the marine zone, the Indian Ocean, as one of the zones. And this has enormous amount of resources that we never believed that we have. It's worthwhile more than the oil resources that other countries may boast about. The marine zone is going to be one of the major economic drivers in time to come. So basically, since I was talking about the environment a little bit, what are we going to do with the western region environment? We are going to see all these conservation areas, the forest cover, streams and rivers, tanks and reservoirs, paddy fields and marshes. These are the areas which is comprising about 23%, 24% of the land area. Our land area is about 5% of the country, and out of that 5%, if you take that 5% is something like 3,500 square kilometers, 5 times Singapore. And of that, 24% to 25% is this marshy land, paddy fields, tanks and reservoirs, streams and rivers, forest cover, and that kind of environmentally very sensitive areas. So we are going to keep it. So our megapolis plan, which was sometimes people refer to as SESMA plan or Sabana plan or Singapore plan, is actually far more different to Singapore original master plan. We are going to keep the natural resources as it is, and if possible, increase it. We will tell you down the line how we are going to increase it and all that. Flood impact in the area in the western region will be protected. There is along the Kalani River basin alone, there is 10,000 industries and the commercial establishment which we have surveyed. Now this 10,000 area this is what happened yesterday, but before that they were located like this. I mean, it's ridiculous. Area that could go underwater tomorrow is located like this. They are very high density, and there were about 5,000 families living there with the children, the ladies, and the basically older people, and all that. They were in the near the Kalani River. This is the what our survey found. So it is a recipe for the disaster. You should really not be surprised for what happened to our country during last few days. It was there, it was coming, it was happening, and we knew that, and we tolerated that. And the megapolis plan seeks to relocate all these people into better place in the close by situation. I would like to draw your attention to one of the pictures, this picture. This guy has put up the house right next to the Kalani River. And today I am told now few of them are gone, missing. And we told them 4 or 5 days ago, look, you are living in the danger zone. And you can tell examples of thousands of examples like that about the danger zones in Sri Lanka. And there was a family who came to us for some support because they were connected with our office. They had this house collapsed, and their house, there were mound of mud came and destroyed their kitchen. Then the AGA's office and this so-called disaster management committee officers visited that and said, in Sinhala they said, "Meka tikak honda naha, tikak parissamin inna." And so parissamin hidiya. When the following day the entire house collapsed. And that is the slimy, very unserious attitude most of our government servants were taking on that. And if you saw the TV news, the day before the Aranayaka happened, the news was full of advice not to live in these areas, not to please go to the safer areas. But I believe the government servants and some of the people who are supposed to be advising these people were never told in all seriousness that you got to run for your life. That never happened. I think our country, people take the life and the children's life particularly so unseriously, so lightly. So this is what we pay for. So these are again some pictures which we took during the just 1 week before the flood came. You can see people are happily going about having all these things. They were filling the marshes and they were doing all that. Anyway, I am sorry that I took you away from the main subject. We will now get into the main subject. But I must tell you, the Megapolis Transport Plan seeks to, dreams to, take the people away from these environmentally vulnerable areas to better areas. Transport is never going to be about transporting people. Transport is going to be about saving the lives of the people. It's going to give a new opportunity for people to live in harmony with the environment. So the environment is the basis for the Megapolis plan. The transport plan is going to be, in that sense, a lifesaver. So we'll now look at how it is going to happen. As I said, this is the plan that I showed you, but again it is these development activities are located in different places. To connect them, we have the transport plan. In the transport plan, to realize the master plan that we have shown you, the area that we are going to show up is the planned growth and the growth in different areas, giving the population projection. I must tell you the basic population projection is about, currently we have about 6 million people in the western region. We believe with the existing development and the natural growth is going to go up to about 9 million, by about 3 million increase over next 15 years. So the megapolis master plan is planning for 9 million people. How would they come? During the discussion we can talk about that, but they are distributed among all these areas. The population in 2020, population in 2025, 35, we have located them in the most suitable areas, not in the Kalani River Basin, not in the Kaluganga Basin, not in the marshy lands, not in the water bodies, not in the paddy fields. They have been assigned places which are safer, environmentally acceptable, leaving the sensitive areas. However, integrating the environmentally sensitive areas into the hub. So these are the areas that are going to grow, and when it comes to the point of transport planning, you may have been perhaps tired of seeing so many plans being done on the transport. During the last government, particularly in the period of 2013-2014, there was a plan done, what is called JICA plan, Comtrans. Huge model was run. The survey was carried out in the entire western region. They spent 9 million rupees on the survey alone, asking people some questions and getting their answers, tabulating them, running a highly complicated traffic and transport model. Then that particular study was re-evaluated by the University of Moratuwa, called Strategic Plan for Traffic Management in 2015. So 2013, 2014, 2015, we were planning the traffic and transport system in this country, particularly in the western region. However, nothing came out of it. Am I to, or are we to blame anybody for that? Demanded that we got to resolve our traffic and transport problem. Now this is the irony in this country. We get a lot of good plans, we get a lot of good ideas, we get a lot of good people, the professionals and the able investors, but we don't get it done. We are very complacent about it, and we are very happy to go on without doing nothing or doing nothing. So somehow this happened, then we came in. What did we do? We re-looked at the plan, and that is 7.8 million people are the plan development according to Comtrans, and we increased it, the population up to 9.1 million. That's what government wanted, and government wanted the employment opportunities be increased, the housing stock be increased, industrial estate be increased, etc., etc. So on the basis of population difference between the Comtrans and the current megapolis study, we redistributed the growth and the traffic pattern, what is called origin destination pattern. It came to the kind of situation where we expect daily trips to be increased from somewhere around 7 million to 10 million. Not a big difference. This is the kind of transport movement that happens in a developing place. Of that, about 7.8 million trips will be motorized, either railway or the buses or the cars or the motorbike or the three-wheelers. 7.8 million trips. Of that, out of that 10 million, 2.2 million will be non-motorized. Example, people will walk to work, bicycling to work, and that kind of thing, non-motorized model. And of that, the biggest traffic problem, you believe that is in the Colombo city. That's not so. Only 1.9 million people are stuck in the very small city of Colombo, which is about 40 square kilometers. Not big city. This is not a big city. This is a small city. This is very easily manageable. But it has only 2 million trips a day. It is the areas outside. You just get out of Colombo city and try to drive through Kaduvela. try to drive to Maragama, Horana, is impossible. I just returned from Kandy. Getting from Kandy to Kandy town to Peradeniya take more time than getting from Colombo city one place to another place. This is what is happening to the country. So, therefore, as Professor Amal Kumarge always keep on saying, average travel time is coming down from 17 kilometers current to 12 kilometers, 12 kilometers to 6 kilometers. That is the walking, slower than the walking distance. We all agree on this. But what are we going to do about it? So that is what we are going to present to you this evening. Our team was, some of the key members are being shown here. Dr. Dimantari Silva, Professor Saman Bandara, some of you know, he is the head of Transport Division of the Monash University. Dr. Namali Sitsoma, the head of Public Transport in the KDH, that is Kothalawala Defence University. Then of course my good friends here. Do the people travel by corridor? This was the idea that was mooted during the JICA study. The corridor is rather important. We found something to the contrary. People not only travel by corridors, but also travel crisscross the corridors. This is what we found in the origin destination study. And as you can see, people not only get from Moratuwa to Colombo, they also get down at Dehiwala, they also get down at Ratmalana, then go to Nugegoda, then go to Maharagama. This is rather important. Now this is something that was avoided in the previous study to a great extent, which we have recognized. We have recognized it so much, we even included in our study how a person getting in at Panadura, how far does he go using the current bus transport system. Most of them, according to our calculation, if there is 18,000 people getting from Panadura to bus going on the Gold Road, only almost 9%, 2,000 people will reach Fort, Colombo Fort. The rest will get down along the way. So we got to provide the transport system, we got to provide the transport mode that will take the people from Ratmalana Junction to Maharagama Junction, the Bambalapitiya Junction to Kirulapana Junction. You know what I mean? It is the crisscrossing that is taking a lot of traffic congestion. It is not going through. It is not going through. And if we provide the best of the best transport system on the Gold Road, that will only resolve part of the problem. People will still get down at Bambalapitiya. They will create a huge traffic jam on the Dickmans Road, on the roads going crisscrossing the city. Why? Is because the western region is not a square. It's like the half the Papo or half a orange. It is the crisscrossing that is generating the traffic. That is what is said in this one. If you start from Katubedda, only 10% will get to Colombo. If you start from Ratmalana, only 14% will get to Colombo. If you start from Dehiwala, only 10% will get to Colombo. This is what we found out, and because of that, rather than the corridor-based solution, we got to give a network-based solution. The network has to cut across the areas that was going. That is why this particular diagram on the left side, what you see is the desired line. Desired line means the traffic that is being moving in the manner that they want to, not the way we want to. We don't want people to move the way we want. People won't move. They are a very dynamic creature. They like to go the way they want. And they create the traffic problem. They don't care. They have to go the way they want. So we have to follow them, not that they follow us. That is how kind of situation is the natural situation. What we proposed earlier was the corridor. You go this way, get in at Malambe, go down at Fort. And that is the way the JICA study was somehow manifested. And we are now trying to change it by bringing this into the system. These are the new destinations that we have identified according to the megapolis plan. Megapolis plan is providing the industrial estate, the aero cities, logistic cities, IT cities. So we are really changing the whole thing by putting up these development activities. That has two aspects. One is the system is changed. Secondly, the opportunity is more. The transport opportunity that never existed in the country has been now brought to the forward, and they can be invested. That's where the private sector comes in. Okay. With this slide, I am going to ask Venuji and Kaushan to dip into some of the slides. And this is an important slide. And there, what we have done is we have compared different kind of technologies, including the buses. If you start with the buses, you will be having the transport system somewhere here. The capital cost is given in this axis, and this axis says how many people can be moved. If you start with the buses, you will be somewhere here. The bus fleet that Sri Lanka had, particularly Western region had, was something like 35,000 buses about 10 years ago. It's dwindling, it's coming down. It stands currently for about 25,000. We never said don't have buses. Government never said that. Government said you can have more buses. And the government was giving license and encouraging buses. People's Bank was giving loans and demo buses, Tata buses, this bus, that bus, Chinese bus, Korean bus, everything was flooding. But the people are not going. So what can we do about it? People don't want to go in buses as much as possible. They get into the motorbike, they get into three-wheeler. Then the guy who buys the motorbike today wants to get into a little car tomorrow, and then a better car and bigger car. But most of them start life with the motorbike, a little family with the motorbike, family bike, and they advertise also like that. And 60% of the accidents, I think figures are very clear. They will tell you are from the motorbike and the three-wheelers. This is not sustainable. This is not the system that we can live with. People should know it. That's why we so enthusiastically come to this kind of conferences. We want to harness the knowledge with you, share with you, and get you the driving force of the megapolis. So, coming back to the story, there is what was presented by the Japanese team. They presented two things. They said BRT, then the monorail. The BRT can carry about 12,000 people over a period at a cost of about 5 to 10 million US dollars per kilometer. That's the kilometer cost. That's the way it is costed. Then on the other side, you can go up to by urban rail by about $20 million per kilometer. You can actually enhance the amount of people that is being taken for about 30,000 or more. Actually, it is about 30,000 urban rail. But as you know, urban rail is limited. Where is the railway line? Along the Gold Road, along the Jayala, that area. We have few railway lines, and then there is KV line, Kalani Valley line, going to Avisavela, which is not being used mostly. But with about $30 million, we can do a good deal with the railway line. But in a highly congested urban system like Colombo, we cannot put new lines. That is where the issue is. We can only increase the efficiency of the existing lines. So let's get to the efficiency, making the efficiency of the existing line. That was not the problem. Then comes the question of the next option. The next option was costing us something like $40 million a kilometer, and that is called monorail. Our Japanese partners, friends, were very keen to embark on this monorail project 3 years ago. For whatever the reason, the study that was done by the Japanese was sent to the Morito University. Morito University came back and said, monorail might not work. I think they found out monorail is outdated, it's abandoned in some of the countries, and also it is very costly, and the fewer manufacturers. Number of manufacturers are less and less, and the only areas where it is effectively employed are between the airports. If you have 2-3 terminals, from once you land on one terminal, get to the next terminal, the best way is to get to the monorail, because it can quickly move you around. And there are so many other advantages and disadvantages which we can talk about. Then came the elevated BRT, the bus rail system, but you have to elevate, which is going to be costing too much because of the elevated structure is fairly high. There was another option that we looked at, that is called LRT, light rail system. The light rail system that we were proposing, or we are struggling with that now, and we are suggesting and we are asking everyone's comments, is something that can carry 30,000 people per hour per direction. One lane track, elevated at the center medium of the road. You don't need the acquisition. You don't have to have the acquisition. Whereas the BRT might. If you don't have 6-lane road, BRT might have to have the acquisition. One glaring example is the stretch between Bambalapitiya and Ratmalana. It has only 2 lanes on either side. If the BRT comes, what happens to the 2 lane? One lane is BRT, other lane is for all the traffic. The cars, the bus, the bicycle, and Tisos, Paingana, all these fellows have to go on one track. And that is not ever going to happen on the whole road. That's why 8-kilometer area, if you are going to have the BRT, we will have to build another elevated section to carry the BRT for that 8 kilometers. And how long the BRT is valid? According to the current studies, by about 2025, BRT will not be sustainable for the simple reason the population movement will be far more greater than that. We will be back to the current square, the current situation, back to zero. So therefore, we wanted to take a longer view, long-term view. What is sustainable? What is possible within the given this traffic congestion, within the given less density of the road, less width of the road? What is possible? We found as against the monorail, the LRT gives far more advantages. I will tell one example. The monorail has to have the system at a higher level. Why at a higher level? It cannot land, it cannot go on the road. Whereas the LRT can go on the top and it can also land. The cost comes down by 25 to 30% when it lands. Right. Yes. Now what is happening is if we take the line up to about Battaramulla, from beyond Battaramulla or Malambe, we don't have to go at a higher level. We can land. As a result of that, the cost comes down to 20-30%. In any case, no acquisition is necessary. In any case, no widening of the road necessary. Only in the railway stations, you might have to take a little bit here and there. But we identified a lot of government properties in the main junction. Places like Kaduel, places like Malambe, places like Battaramulla, places like Palavatta, places like Borali. There are a lot of these government properties that can be amalgamated into this LRT system. So, what happens is by 2035, either the BRT system or the bus system or the tram system or the urban railway system alone cannot resolve this traffic problem. That is why we put the line saying what is sustainable beyond 2020 or so, which I'm sure Venuji will explain in detail. The system that can be actually sustained, that can actually resolve the problem and continue. Continuity is very important in the LRT. So that is how we are now sent a cabinet paper from our ministry asking the government to call for quotation, call for consultant to do the detailed design of the LRT system. That will have to be done by internationally renowned, experienced team of people working with the Sri Lankan, and therefore doing the documentation that would then lead to what is called RFP, request for proposal. In the meantime, through a process of EOI, expression of interest, will shortlist the suppliers worldwide who can probably be the contesting to give us the best possible deal. Now, I don't have imagination, I don't have a myth that a private sector will walk into Sri Lanka and do the LRT and walk away with some bit of money and therefore everything is going to be fine. No. Public transport system has never ever worked as a profitable thing. It is the responsibility of the government and the state to help the public transport system going. Therefore, government has to chip in. How does it chip in? The all kind of money that has been offered to us, to the government, by all the countries, including Canadians, Chinese, Koreans, Japanese, money is on the table. Lately we signed some agreement with the Germans. They were very keen on getting into this business. We signed an agreement, our project signed an agreement with Siemens of Germany, and they are very keen to get into the business of doing the transport, IT, science, hospital, this and that. Now, the point in question is that if you are going to get the private sector to come in, government also has to be party into the party. There is no party that is going to be played alone. That's why the transport sector, that's why very important that the gathering today pick up what you can do, which we will explain in a little while. Somehow, to cut the story short, after studying all the system available to us, we came up with what is called integrated transport system network. That has the LRT, that has the bus, that has the VR, that has the electrified railway, that has the road system, that has the elevated road, that has the road network being rehabilitated. All these system comes into a one play.
Thank you, sir. Very good evening to everybody present here today. So, in our transport master plan, actually we have 4 main categories. That is, the first is the public transport improvement, then comes the road infrastructure improvement, then the transport demand management, then finally the environmental sustainability. So, if we look at the public transport improvements, the priority has been given to the railway electrification. Then next it comes the rapid transit system, which is the LRT, the light rail transit system. Then the inland waterways, bus modernization, multimodal transport hubs and centers facilities, as far as like the improvements of school buses and taxi regulations. So when we move on to the railway electrification and modernization, it is not only the electrification of the rail tracks, but the upgrades of the signal stations, the existing stations, then the replacements of the rolling stocks, communications, signals, and the tracks and operations and all. Because prior to the electrification process, we need to upgrade the existing track systems, as well as we have to modernize the signaling systems, especially the upgrades of the stations and all. So after those come in line, we can go to the electrification process in like near future, like starting from 2018 to 2019. But prior to that, we have to improve our existing tracks and then the stations and so on. So this is our plan for the railway electrification. We have 3 existing lines and 2 new lines proposed. So first of all, it is the Panadura Veyangoda line that is extended up to Polgahawela. It is 110 kilometers in long. And then next it comes the Ragamani Gambu with the airport connection. And then thirdly, the KB line. All these 3 lines are existing lines which we need the modernization and the electrification process to be done. And apart from these 3 lines, we propose 2 new lines under the Megapolis Transport Plan. That is one from Kottava to Horana, that is 22 kilometers in long. Next one will be the Kalaniya Dompe Kosgama line. Actually, mainly this line will be a freight transport line. Depending on the demand prevailing in the future, we can choose whether we are going to transport passengers in this, but mainly we are targeting on a freight transport along this Kalaniya Dompe Kosgama line. So then next, our next proposal is about the new rapid transit system, RTS, which is we recommend the LR, light rapid transit, as the mode. So in here, we have 7 lines in our proposal. Actually, in the CBD area, there are 3 lines which is going at the elevated section, elevated structure, and then when it comes to the suburbs, we can go at grade as our PDs mentioned earlier. Actually, in this video, you can get an idea about what is a LRT system. Actually, when the power is supplied to the LRT system, there are 2 types where how we can provide the electricity, the power to the train actually. That is, one is using the pantograph, that is the overhead catenary part, or else we can go to the third rail part. Actually, from the feasibility study, we have to choose whether we are going from the overhead catenary part or the third rail part. From the pre-feasibility studies which we have done, we hope that the method that we should adapt is the third rail system actually, not the overhead catenary part, when we consider the aesthetic views and also the supply of the power as well. Actually, the other thing is why we choose the LRT as the mode of rapid transit system is the transformation from elevated to at grade. At the sections where we can go at grade, we can transfer from an elevated system to the at grade systems. And also, when we consider the depots and the stations, we know that it costs a lot to construct a depot or a station. So when we consider a LRT system where at all the possible depots, especially in the depots, we can take the depots to the at grades at ground level, so that it will hugely reduce or truncate the cost associated with the construction. And actually, it is the LRT system. Of course, it's more comfortable, accessible to all, and all these modern facilities are available with that. For all the 7 lines, actually the total cost is about 3.7 billion. We estimated it like $50 million per kilometer. Actually, the reason why we selected LRT over monorail, I will give a brief justification on this. The first fact is the reduction in cost when we go on at grade or the ground operations. That is that we can construct the depots and stations at grade, as I mentioned earlier. Then next, the lower operation cost with LRT. Main issue is the switching issue. As you can see in that video, in the switching of a monorail, actually we have to transfer a beam, a huge truncate beam we have to transfer, but it is not an easy task to be done. So we have and the cost associated with this switching is huge. So we don't have such issue when it comes to LRT. And the other thing is, monorail cannot be evolved as a network actually, because when we take the examples all around the world, actually most of the time monorail is one line running from one end to another. Like, we can't have all those kinds of crossings and all. And the other thing is, when we consider the LRT technology, we have more providers all around the world when it is compared with the monorail. Then actually, why we considered about the monorail versus monorail, LRT and BRT it was a bit controversial. So why is BRT sustainable? It is a question. But what we have identified through the Megapolis Transport Plan is we cannot adapt BRT in our plan. It is due to some of the critical issues actually prevailing with the BRT. Like a context like Sri Lanka, actually, when we take a road, we have a lot of left turnings as well as a lot of pedestrian crossings associated with the one lane. So it is not possible for us to have a bus lane separately running in the median, so that people have to get into the median, so they have to cross the road, because we have so much of road crossings, pedestrian crossings as well as left turnings. It will increase the number of accidents as well as number of fatalities. So because the best example is we can get from Delhi actually. What Delhi BRT was established in 2008, but it was scrapped away in 2015 due to because it doesn't fit to that context. The Asian context, when we consider the Asian context, actually that context doesn't fit much for a BRT system unless it has kind of a good supportive system to other private transport modes, as well as if we are catering that corridor by another public transport mode. So actually, which is durable, like not to have a temporary system and like we have to demolish it by like 2025 and to get on to another mode. This is what happened in Delhi. So next, this is our RTS system, the new rapid transit system, which is we proposed as the LRT. So this is the first line, the elevated line, line 1 green. This will be running through Fort, Kollupitiya, Bambalapitiya, Boralla, Union Place and Maradana. This is all along like 15 kilometers in long. And then comes the orange line, that is from Fort, Maradana, Mattakuliya, Paliyagoda, around 11.5 kilometers in long. Then next, the third line is the red line from Dematagoda, Battaramulla, Kirulapana, Havelock Town to Bambalapitiya, that is around 10 kilometers in long. Then comes these three lines, the green line, yellow line and the red line, green, orange, red line. These three lines should be elevated for definitely, because these are in the core area of Colombo and there's no way that we can go at grade. But when it comes to RTS 4 too, because RTS 4 is from Boralla to Battaramulla, we have no way that we can go at grade. But like when it comes to a depot or something, like the yard will be at Dematagoda, and when it comes to depot, because we have 7 lines altogether, so at least we will need three depots, because for like 25 kilometers we need 1 depot when we take the examples from all around the world. So because of that, at that situation we can have our depots at grade. Then next, the RTS line 5 is from Battaramulla to Kottawa via Malabe. It's like 9.6 kilometers in long. And then the olive line, that is from Malabe to Kaduwela, actually from the RTS 5, 6 and 7. 7 is from Paliyagoda to Kadawatha, which is a line which was recently proposed. And actually this line 5, 6 and 7, considerable portion can be go at grade. Actually like at least 5 kilometers from each. So these are some of the main stations like the covering through the RTS system. And about the phasing, like how we are going to implement. In the first phase, we will be having the RTS line 1 and RTS line 4. That is the line running around the Colombo like Fort, Kollupitiya, Bambalapitiya, Boralla, Union Place and Maradana, and then next the Boralla Battaramulla line. This will be the first phase of the LRT project. Then next, it will be the orange line and the pink line. Orange line is from orange line and the pink line in the second phase. Then the third phase will be all 3 lines, the red line, olive line and the ash line. So this is how we have proposed, because considering all the congestions prevailing, we from all the analysis, like we suppose that the green line and the purple line should come first, because in the Battaramulla area we know there's a huge traffic congestion, and if we are going to make the Battaramulla area the administrative district, we should, and it is critical and it is crucial to provide a good transport system before we are making it more congested. So this is altogether the LRTS network. Then next, it is about the inland water transport system. We have identified 3 lines that actually 3 canals where we can accommodate the boat transport. Boat transport in the sense, this is kind of a comfortable, safe commuter service where like people doesn't want to wear the safety jackets, because if we tell a person to wear a safety jacket and go to the office, definitely he will say no. But because of that, they will be available, but we have to provide a commuter service which is so comfortable for people to move around. So as the first first line will be the Vellavatta Battaramulla line, Battaramulla line. It's along that canal. Then next, there will be a shuttle service in the Beara Lake from Fort to Union Place. Actually, it will reduce the travel time hugely, like significantly. Then next, it's the Mattakuliya Hangmala line along the Kalani River. This is the practicality of this we should look into during the feasibility studies, because of the water intake from the Ambatale, it is not practical for us to run motorboats. So we can propose some alternatives like electric boats or like solar powered boats, or some kind of, we can come across any alternative if we wish to have this line from Mattakuliya to Hangmal. And actually, like as an example, in the night time, apart from the passenger transport, we can use this type of commuter services as a tourism, as to promote the tourism like across Colombo area, like around this Battaramulla area and all. So then, one of the most important part, the bus modernization. Like we all know, like most of the people are undergoing the quality slump which is prevailing in the bus transport system in the current situation. So what we propose is we have to replace all these existing buses, normal commuter buses, by low flow air conditioned buses. Actually already in Sri Lanka there is a policy like we have to upgrade these buses by every 8 years. So like we believe that if we using that policy, actually not like doing something alien, but like using that policy already which is there in our country, we can use that policy to replace all these kinds of Indian buses by the low flow air conditioned buses. And from that, like better door-to-door service, easy access and comfortability integrated with the RTS, and mainly the buses will be kind of a feeder service. Actually, like from the railway electrification and from the RTS, there will be a good mobility from, like say, from A to B. But you know, for the radial transformations, radial transport systems, we need the buses to feed from like to the last end. So the buses, that is where the bus is most important. So we have to improve the buses as a feeder service. So all these institutional reforms should be come across, and most importantly, the revision of bus route should be done. We know, like, and we should identify all those missing links. You know, like we all know that we have to, if we want to go from A to B, we have to go from like 2 or 3 buses. The number of transfers are high. If we can have one bus to go from A to B, it will be more conventional and more comfortable for people. So there are so much of such missing links prevailing within the western province of Sri Lanka, and we have to identify those, and we have to reduce the number of transfers for people. Then next, about the multimodal transport hubs and centers. The main hub is proposed in the Fort Petta main area. Actually, like somebody will not believe actually, but there is about 75 acres of land which can be developed. And it's under the government or in around this Fort Petta area. So under the megapolis plan, what we are trying to do is to develop this area, and apart from this will be the transport hub, and integrated all along with the commercial, logistics and leisure facilities as well. And apart from the Fort Petta hub, there will be 11 multimodal centers in Horana, Kadawatha. Actually, this will be in 2 levels. In the first level, it will be Horana, Kottawa, Kaduwela, Kadawatha, Panadura, Nigambu and Avissawella. And in the third level, it will be Gampaha, Mirigama, Ragama and Moratuwa. Levels in the sense the capacity and its size will be different. Like second level is much bigger than this third level. That's why. This video will give you an understanding about what kind of an thing we are trying to do for the Fort Petta hub. This is a rough illustration of a hub, a transport hub, where all these allocations for the railway electrification, taxis and all the paratransits, as well as park and ride facilities are given for the people, and it is luxurious, comfortable and all. This will be the main node actually, where people can come and park their vehicles and go. So altogether, when we take what I have mentioned earlier, all this electrification of rail and the modern RTS systems, modernizations of bus service, inland water transport system, multimodal facilities, and when we take a holistic picture of this all will look like this. The spread of this network, so that it will cover all the western region, and it will support the future structure plan of megapolis like Meerigama, Horana, Plantation City in Avisavella, and the Malabe Science City, Science and IT City, and all those will be catered by the transport network which we have identified. Because with the land use, between the land use and transport, there is an equilibrium, because we can't get one isolated and treat one isolatedly, but it is a combination always, and it has a kind of equilibrium between the land use and the transport.
Thanks, Sonaji, and good evening, everyone. So let me move on with the next one. They improve the school transport service and office transport service. So when you look at the urban traffic congestion today, a big contribution is done by the school, the vehicles that are coming to drop their children to the schools. When you look at the context, you cannot go and simply ask the parents to get their children transported to the schools by the prevailing public transport service, because it's not reliable, it's not safe, the security is less, and they cannot trust. So, but if you are to reduce the congestion at the school starting time, the peak time in the morning and afternoon into 1 to 2 p.m., you have to get these people who are traveling, getting their children to the school by their vehicles to the public transport service. So in order to do that, you have to cater their demand. You have to supply their demand. What they are looking for is the security, comfortability, and everything. So if you are to, if you can provide, if you can provide a school transport service using buses and using vans, which is air conditioned and very comfortable, and the conductors and the drivers and helpers whom we can trust, and the government is in there to regulate the system, so then the people will transfer their children to these facilities, and it will be a huge relief for the traffic congestion at the peak hour in the morning as well. So and in the same way, if you can improve the office transport services for these officers with the intervention of these main authorities, we can actually relieve the traffic congestion in a large scale. With that having said, the existing Sisusari program by the NTC, the National Transport Commission, will be extended and it will be improved, and with that separate companies will be invited to get involved in this and operate their services, such services to cater this demand. So it will be of a high demand if they cater with the right qualities, right condition. And then when it comes to regulate taxi service, the common identification of taxi service will be needed, and it should be IT based and should be regulated over the government. Now it is being done for a certain extent. Now it will be improved further, and the review of charging regulations should be done, and this will improve the taxi service within the region, and it will be a big relief for the people. And then going into the road infrastructure, under the megapolis transport plan, what we have actually done is we have taken the already done plans from the RDA, and we have prioritized them according to the megapolis structure plan. So according to the road transport infrastructure development under megapolis, we are pressing the already planned Central Expressway, Ruwanpura Expressway going on. And then as you can see, under the megapolis structure plan itself, we are proposing this Horana Meerigama via Padukka. This road, Horana Meerigama via Padukka, because there are several developments coming in at Meerigama. There's an industrial zone coming in, and there are some corridors which this road is crossing. So improving this road at a latter part of the time as a medium, we are trying to implement this as a medium-term intervention. So as this road crosses many corridors coming from Colombo, there will be a lot of travel demand along this road. So we are proposing to improve this road, and this road as well from Negombo to Meerigama, because there is the logistic corridor here. There are some other developments coming in at Divulpiti and Meerigama, and this road is also important, and then again the Jala to developability road. And all the other RDA identified ongoing projects will be moving forward as they are. And then we come on to the next most important part as far as the road infrastructure is concerned. It is the new urban expressway. So as you can see, RDA also has proposed this urban expressway, elevated expressway from New Calais Bridge to Port access. So under the megapolis structure plan as well, it is of paramount importance to construct this expressway from New Calais Bridge to Port with the Port access. And then again, the next expressway is from New Calais Bridge to Pore via Rajagiri and Battaramulla. And with these two expressways, as you can see, this is the Southern Expressway and this is the Outer Circular Expressway and this is the Karunayaka Expressway. So all these are interconnected. So if you are to get this traffic down at some point, it will create a big congestion in the context, within the city limits. So what we are trying to do is take all these traffic coming from upper part of the country and then from the Central Expressway, Ruwanpura Expressway to the expressway network and take them to this port access and connect it to the Marine Drive, and there will be Marine Drive extension coming in which I will be describing later. And likewise we are through this implementation of this network itself, not like a single road, to this network we are trying to reduce the traffic congestion in the city limits at a large scale. So this is the Port access road and this is the New Canal Bridge to Pore via Rajagiri, and these are the other links that we are trying to, pressing from a megapolis transport plan as identified RDA by RDA as well, the baseline extension which you can see, and then the Marine Drive extension from up to Gold Face from north and up to Dehibala from south, and then the duplication extension up to Hospital Road, Kalubowli Hospital Road. And then as you know, the public transport interventions and the road infrastructure developments going to take time. So but the development of the people is not going to help, so it is going to continue, and the more people will move in to the city and there will be a lot of congestion taking place. So somehow or the other we got to manage this congestion at a certain level until we build this infrastructure. There are some companies and then some banks doing it right now, and in all the other countries it's been implemented. And the next one is the efficient traffic enforcement with CCTV monitoring and red light camera. We are coordinating with the police and DMT regarding this now. So this will enforce the this will eliminate the traffic violations people are doing. So this will make people more disciplined when they are traveling on the roads, which has a great contribution towards the traffic congestion. So it will eliminate that. And then the parking management system, which is a crucial problem in the city limits now, not having enough parking facilities, creating a lot of congestion in the roads. So we have coordinating with the UDA. Now UDA have already identified 26 land slots which we can use for implementation of parking spaces, and we are looking at the systems to manage these parking systems, and through using the IT systems we can let the people know whether there are enough parking facilities at these locations as well before they coming into that location. And on the other hand, one of the other major improvements is the signal light improvements. Improvement of signal lights, upgrade the signal timing which is not updated for a long time, and then the synchronizations. So once all these improvements are done, then we can do the real-time traffic management in the Colombo CBD and the suburb. So when it comes to the real-time traffic management, it will reduce this traffic congestion at a larger scale. But in order to do so, we have to do these minor improvements prior to that. And then it comes to the road pricing, which will enforce the people who are traveling in the private transport to get shifted to the public transport. But we are just proposing is it only after providing sufficient infrastructure for the public transport, so which is more preferably come after 2025. So the cost associated with these transport demand management measures are $196 million USD. Apart from those, we have identified immediate minor interventions to improve the traffic demand management or to manage the traffic demand. There are 56 different projects identified by the police, the UDA, the CMC and every other organization given to us and identified by the University of Monroe and so on. So we have listed those, categorized those projects under this main topic. So those are also will be implemented immediately to cater this traffic, to reduce this traffic congestion. And this is one of the examples for minimizing effects and so on. And then this is one of the interventions that we did at near the Vishaka College. There is a big traffic congestion in the morning due to the vehicle parking because due to the vehicles parking in the road. So what we did was we did a minor intervention at Vishaka College restricting the traffic to not to park at the location. And it has actually, you can see, since I don't have time, I will rush through. Actually, if you can see, after the intervention of that, this is the same time, 7:20 a.m. the next day after the intervention of the traffic. There's no traffic congestion in the road, on the duplication road as well, in the Vajra road as well. So what I wanted to say is, with these minor interventions, we can do a lot of change. We can relieve a big congestion in the road. So with that, I would like to invite our project director Lakshmi Jayasekara to move on with the environmental sustainable transportation.
Thank you, Kaushan. Thank you, Vinodji. So I'm going to wrap up this presentation this evening in a manner that it is not roads, it is not rail, it is not mega projects, it is not small project. It's a combination of a basket of different size, different scale, different effects bringing into the city, and this is what would make the megapolis tick. In addition to what Kaushan and Venuji presented, there are about 100 odd additional projects like the feasibility studies, feasibility study for road capacity, detailed design, consultancy work, construction work, supply work, etc. All in all, we believe that we have in this package, transport package, would be at least $10 billion, billion, to be spent during next the 5 years during the tenure of this government, and the most of that money would come from the government, and some of that money will have to, most of that money would come from the private sector, and some of the monies has to be chip in or fall the projects into place by government intervention. And we have been negotiating with the donor agencies, so-called lending agencies. I wouldn't call them donor. They donate nothing. They only give loans, and we work with them, and we found that quite a lot of interest among the lending community to come in either in the form of loans or equity, and we are also now contemplating enormous capital fund for the megapolis, at least to create a $2 billion fund on which we are right now working, and so there will be some financial capability on the side of the government as well, where the private sector needs the help, need the support financially and the otherwise, like the lands that Venuji mentioned. That land in Peta alone, it will be a major asset. 35 acres of the government land been thrown open to the private sector to put up multimode transport center, which will not only have transport facilities but also accommodation, the commercial space, various other public amenities, etc., etc. With that, may I suggest that we close the main presentation, and this program is available for you to get for your thumb pen and or the CD, and we are very open, we are very transparent. We have sent this whole program to the cabinet, and the cabinet is deliberating for last 2-3 weeks because there were so many decisions to be made, so many discussions to happen, and some of the projects have been approved in principle, but most of them need various combination and contribution from the other ministries, like the finance ministry, the road development authority, and the education ministry, etc. Our main signal that we have got is they are all positively supporting the transport plan as a major plan. With that, I will bring back to the analysis part. This is the time scale that we talked about. We are working on a time scale. We believe that we are a little bit behind. We want to expedite, but the expediting the project has to have the public support and the professional support and the investor community support. That is what we are holding this kind of conferences, and as I said, enthusiastically attending these workshops, public lectures, public consultation, etc., etc. In the meantime, much more work is happening inside our agencies, both the UDA, SLRDC, Road Development Authority, Megapolis project, which is going to be authority sooner than later. And with that, I hope the communities like yours, the Builders Association and the other agencies representing the general public and the professional community will be really able to push this project more than leaving it in the hand of the politician and the bureaucracy. Never do that, it will never work. Thank you very much.